Assalamu alaikum. I'm Amina Haider, lecturer, Institute of Business Studies. I'm here with the course of Business Research Methods. This is lecture number 12, and the topic for discussion is elements of research design. We discussed some of the elements of research design in our previous lectures, and in this lecture we would discuss some more elements that include the study setting, the unit of analysis, and the research time horizon. So let's move towards our topics. The topics that we are going to discuss today include the research study setting, which could be contrived or it could be non-contrived, the unit of analysis, and time horizon, in which we will see if the research study could be a cross-sectional study or longitudinal study. So moving towards the study setting. The research setting can be seen as the physical, social, and cultural site in which the researcher conducts the study. So, for research setting, the environment could either be contrived or it could be non-contrived. A contrived study is also called a controlled setting, or in other words, we could also call it an artificial environment. So a contrived study involves creation of an artificial environment in which the events are strictly controlled. In a controlled setting, independent variable is changed to see its effect on the dependent variable. For example, you change the rate of interest and then you see its effect on the extent of deposits. If the rate of interest is increased, what is the effect on the extent of deposits? Or if the rate of interest is decreased, what is its effect on the extent of deposit? So changing the independent variable, you try to find its effect on the dependent variable. So such type of research studies are conducted in a controlled setting, or in other words we call it a contrived study. Whereas a non-contrived study is also called an uncontrolled setting, or we can call it a natural environment. So here it involves in which the events occur normally. A natural environment where events occur normally, we can call it a uncontrolled, or we can call it a non-contrived setting. For example, we want to see if the rate of interest and extent of deposits are related, or we want to see that if there is a relationship between the rate of interest and the extent of deposit. So we doesn't change anything, we doesn't control any factor, we doesn't control any variable, and we conduct that research in a natural environment. So such type of studies are called non-contrived studies. The study setting may be classified into three categories: field study, field experiments, and lab experiments. Usually, field study and field experiments are example of non-contrived setting, and lab experiment is an example of contrived setting. We will discuss these categories in detail one by one. Field study. If various factors are examined in the natural setting in which daily activities going on as normal with minimum research interference, the study is field study, or we can call the setting as non-contrived setting. So the researcher goes to a research site and observes and asks questions but does not change anything. Correlational study on work performance and wage is an example of field study. We want to observe whether work performance and wages are related or there is a relationship between them or not. So we does not change anything, but through a series of questions, through questionnaires, through asking questions, we want to see the relationship between work performance and wages. Another example could be a bank manager who wants to analyze the relationship between interest rate and bank deposit patterns of clients. She tries to correlate the two by looking at deposit into different kinds of account, such as saving account. She tried to observe the certificate of deposits as interest change. This is a field study where the bank manager has merely taken the balance in various types of accounts and correlated them to the changes in the interest rate. Research here is done in a non-contrived setting with no interference with the normal work routine. So such type of studies are called field studies. The next is the field experiment. If cause and effect relationship are studied with some amount of researcher interference, but still in the natural setting where work continues in the normal environment, the study is field experiment. Here, there is a small mistake, or it might be a misprint. The bracket is showing that it is a contrived setting study. Field experiments are non-contrived studies, because such studies are conducted with very limited intervention on the part of the researcher. Here the respondents are carefully chosen and stimuli are manipulated according to the research requirement, but all these happenings are being made in a very natural environment and no artificial environment is being created. So that's why field experiments are non-contrived studies. So in a field experiment, you make certain changes to some of the independent variable to see how these variables affect the dependent variable. Changing one or two variables and study its impact on the dependent variable is what the field experiment is all about. A cause and effect relationship are studied with some amount of researcher interference, but still in natural setting where work continues in the normal. Uh, Example could be that a bank manager wants to determine the cause and effect relationship between interest rate and the deposit money in the bank. So she selects certain banks, and for 1 week she advertised the annual rate for new certificate of deposit received during that week, and in a manner that the interest rate would be 9% in one branch, 8% in another, and 10% in the third. Within the week, she would be able to determine the effects, if any, of interest rate on deposit mobilization. The above would be this example would be a field experiment, since nothing but the interest rate is only manipulated, with all the activities are occurring in a very normal and a very natural environment. So field experiments are the one where there is minimum researcher interference, limited researcher interference, and certain variables are changed to see its effect on the dependent variable. Lab experiment. If the researcher explore cause and effect relationship, not only exercising a high degree of control, but in an artificial and deliberately created setting, that is a contrived setting, and such experiments, lab experiments, are conducted in an artificial environment. Uh, we would take an example, for instance, taking the previous example of the interest rate and the deposit in the bank. For instance, here 40 students are selected, and the researcher splits the student into 4 groups and give each one of them 50,000 rupees, which they are told that they might buy their needs or save for the future, or both. The researcher offers them interest on what they save as following: 6% on saving for group 1, 8% for saving for group 2, 9% on saving for group 3, and 1% for group 4. So here the researcher has created an artificial laboratory environment and has manipulated the interest rate for saving. He has also chosen subjects with similar backgrounds. Unit of analysis. It refers to the level of aggregation of the data collected during the subsequent data analysis. In simple words, the unit of analysis is the major entity that you are analyzing in your study. It could be individuals, it could be dairies, groups, organization, culture, countries, etc. So, why we call it a unit of analysis and not something else? Because it's the analysis you do in your study that determines what unit is. For example, if you are comparing the children in two classrooms on achievement or on the basis of their test scores, the unit is the individual child, because you have a score for each child. So we will discuss all these units. For example, if the researcher focus on how to raise the motivational level of different employees, then we are interested in individual employees in the organization. Here, the unit of analysis is the individual. If the researcher is interested in studying two-person interaction, then the unit of analysis is DIETS. For example, analysis of husband and wife and supervisor subordinate relationship at workplace. Similarly, we can also use groups as a unit of analysis. If the problem statement is related to group effectiveness, then the unit of analysis would be at the group level. If we compare different departments in the organization, then the data analysis will be done at the departmental level. For example, Johnson & Johnson company wants to see which of its various division. By various division, I mean it could be soap, shampoo, body oil, etc. And they wanted to see which division has made profits of over 12% during the current year. Here, the unit of analysis, the profits of the division will be examined and the information aggregated across various geographical unit of divisions. If we compare different organizations, that the data analysis will be done at the organization level. For example, the healthcare industry, for instance, includes hospitals, homes, clinics, and other health care providing facilities. The data from these subunits will have to be aggregated to see how many employees are employed by the healthcare industry. Similarly, if we compare different cities of any country, so the unit of analysis would be of city or there. For example, if we compare different countries, then the data analysis will be at the country level. The chief executive of a multinational corporation wants to know the profit made during the past 5 years by each of the subsidiaries in England, Germany, and France. It is possible that there are many regional offices of these subsidiaries in each of these countries. On the basis of time horizon, we can divide the research study into cross-sectional study and longitudinal study. Cross-sectional study can be done in which data are gathered just once, perhaps over a period of days or weeks or months, in order to answer a research question. Example: a drug company desirous of investing in research for a new headache pill conducted a survey among headachy people to see how many of them would be interested in trying the new pill. Another example of a cross-sectional study is that if you want to compare cholesterol level between daily walkers and non-walkers, so you conduct a cross-sectional study for it. So at one point in time, if you conduct a research, that is a cross-sectional research. Longitudinal study: studying people or phenomena at more than one point in time in order to understand the research question. Such type of studies are called longitudinal study. Data are gathered at two different points in time, not at one point in time, which was the case in cross-sectional research. So here data are gathered at two different points in time. The study is not cross-sectional kind, but is carried longitudinally across a period of time. Example: one could study the sale volume of a product before and after an advertisement, and provided other environment changes have not impacted on the result, one could attribute the increase in sale volume, if any, to the advertisement. Another example could be that you want to measure the cholesterol level of daily workers over an extended period of time. So here you conduct the study at more than one point in time. So such type of research are longitudinal research. This is the reference book that I used for today's lecture. That's it for today. Thank you.